So right now I'd like to bring up John Huff and have John present the floating bed. John has done this for decades. I mean, his clientele is a who's who of all the Hollywood stars, and everyone from James Cameron, Jay McCarthy, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, Nick Nolte, many people. And the great thing about the floating bed is it is great for people with autism, post-traumatic stress disorder, motion sickness, and John will sort of explain all that as he gets set up. But you know, the health and well-being of all of us is crucial, and with the toxicity in this world, and with what we, you know, things you don't know what you're eating, like China had a big problem with baby milk, and was killing a lot of babies, and they found out the manufacturer put a concrete mix just in there to make it even more profitable. And you know, unfortunately, you just don't know what's in your food these days. So what John's going to describe is how this bed can greatly affect your health, and why, you know, 8 hours of sleep at night with no motion and no movement could be actually deadly to you. So now, ladies and gentlemen, John Huff, floating bed.
Hey, thank you. Welcome, everybody. While I'm getting organized, I would invite everybody to take 1 minute and stand up and take a few deep breaths. Okay. A little bit more. There you go. That felt pretty good, didn't it? Just standing up and breathing. There's actually a reason for that. I'll explain that later. I want to thank Marvin for bringing me here, Robert Plar, some of these other people I'm just now meeting you, Ron, amazing products everywhere I'm seeing. And so far, we've talked about things to make your house green, which is super important. All these visionaries here are coming up with great things. I'm going to talk about that too, but the floating bed has another advantage, which not only is it green in terms of building, recyclable materials we use in it, but it's also fun. And fun is kind of an important thing. And so later today, I can take you to Marvin's place and you can actually try this bed out, because I'm going to give you a bunch of dry information relatively, but when you lie down in it, it'll make a lot more sense. So this bed, the floating bed, my invention, can actually bring you better health, happiness, and even bliss. I know that's maybe an extreme thing to talk about bliss, but again, when you lie down in it, you'll see. So my name is John Huff. I hope everybody here gets to meet me. I've got cards over there. Everybody take a card at some point. And I know I sort of look like a hippie, and I won't be insulted if you think that. But first and foremost, I'm a scientist and inventor. And I've been doing this for 50 years professionally. So over those years, I probably figured a few things out. Most of my study has been about physiology, the body, and overall health. And so I have a background in addition to that in mechanics and biomechanics. And I'm here to explain some things about physiology that will change your life if you let it. You obviously have to act on any of these technologies, but if you do that, your life will get better. Your house will be greener. And if you sleep in motion, your health will be greener. And mainly, I'm going to explain something to you that should be so blindingly obvious that you'll wonder why no one ever thought of this before. But I'll get to that in a few minutes. My history, like I say, I'm an inventor. I've made a bunch of things by getting calm inside. I'm a meditator, so I calm down, and then basically I'm a receiver. I listen to what the universe is saying, so people think inventors are these brilliant people, and we are, maybe, but mostly we're receivers. The universe has all this information, and people who can quiet down can hear this information and then create new products that are paradigm shifts. And everyone in this room is on that wavelength to some extent. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the ability to hear these subtle whispers that the universe is giving, and then hopefully act on it, which is obviously the other half. Historically, my first invention, well, actually, let me back up. My dad was a physician, and my mom was a nutritionist. So when I grew up, I had both of these two opposite influences in my life. My mom was into Adele. That is, back in the day, Adele was, the person who knew about nutrition. And so that was holistic, basically. But my dad, as a physician, always said, you've got to be able to prove things. You can't just make some wild claim. You need medical studies. Anything you're going to invent, you have to be able to prove it, because otherwise you're just saying, hold this magic rock, your life will get better. So I'm not particularly a magic rock kind of guy. If I'm working on something, I want to be able to prove how it works and what it does. And otherwise, even though it may work, maybe the magic rock works, but if I can't show how and why and what the benefits are, it's just not my thing. I don't get involved. So one of my first inventions was an energy bar back in 1971. Before there were healthy energy bars, everybody before us, that first company of mine, made bars that are full of sugar, and they had fillers like soy flour, which is marginally okay, but not great. And we made a bar. We just decided we want to make the healthiest energy bar we can. It'll have no sugar, no fillers. It'll have ginseng root in it. It'll have bee pollen, all of these things that at that point weren't on the market. And the reason I came about this was because from my mom's influence, I knew about being holistic, healthy body. But from my dad's influence, I knew how to look up medical studies. So I didn't put ginseng root in our bar because it was magic. I put it in because I saw these studies. I would go, back then you had to go to the library to PubMed, and you could look up in PubMed where all the scientific studies were, or the Lancet, or all these medical journals. You could see what had been found and proven about nutritional products, not just some wild, extravagant claims, but proof. Robert can tell you about mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, for example. Same kind of thing. You look up the studies, and then you don't have to make wild claims. You can say, this is what's been found. So, in my earlier years, again, I would go to the library, I would look up PubMed, and I would find things as I was developing all these nutritional products. And in the course of doing that, I read thousands of studies, still do it every day. Now we can do it on the internet. You can actually, at home, you can go on PubMed. You don't have to go to some library and look up stuff. You can, on PubMed, you can find all these studies. And the interesting thing is, you will find scientific discoveries 10 or 20 years before they end up in the public awareness. And I started that with nutritional stuff, and as I would look up things, I would see something else, like, oh, here's a study on the benefits of Rocky. And I would say, oh, that's interesting. And then I'd go back to my nutritional stuff, but then a few days later, another study on the benefits of Rocky. Over and over and over. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I would pass on. But eventually, I realized that no one was doing anything about bringing motion into your life, whereas now there are people interested in better food, to some extent, and although not as widely available as we would like, you can find healthier food. But in terms of this motion thing, I had several eureka moments along the way. And one of them, which came to my mind, is I have a question for everybody. If you have a baby, and that baby has been fed, and he's still unhappy, can't sleep, what is the first thing that a mother or maybe a father does?
Rock.
They rock the baby, exactly. Let's say that conservatively there's 7 billion people on earth right now, and conservatively again, when a mother finds that their baby can't sleep, they try things, and at a certain point, they rock the baby, and they find that the baby sleeps better. So with 7 billion people, let's say every mother has done that 30 times, including on you personally. Your mother already proved to you viscerally that rocking will help you go to sleep faster and sleep healthier. So if we say 7 billion people have done this 30 times, that is a scientific experiment that has proven that rocking produces better sleep 200 billion times. Let's just say 7 billion people, 30 times. That's 200 billion times this scientific experiment has been done, and we know the outcome. So that's kind of profound when you think about it, because you could never do a scientific study on anything with that level of proof. But unfortunately, because like everybody, I'm of limited intelligence, that's not how I came up with the floating bed. I did it the hard way, the slow way. I looked at these studies, like I said, and I saw these benefits of rocking, and I thought, okay, I want to integrate this into my life. It wasn't until later I realized, oh, I thought I invented this thing, but every mother already had. And the downside, the limitation was that no one, even though they knew that rocking was good for a baby, no one ever took it a step further and said, wow, if rocking is good for a baby, is it good for teenagers? Is it good for adults? Is it good for really old people? That's what the studies started to find. They found that not just for babies, but literally every human being, every breathing animal needs more motion in their life. And if you can get that during activity, that's great. If you can get it in sleep, that's really great, because that's normally a time when you're devoid of activity. And we find in modern civilization that virtually all human beings are deficient in motion. Like our ancestors got motion. They chopped wood, they carried water. I mean, until a few thousand years ago, you did not have running water in your house, and you had to go somewhere, get water from the well, carry it. All day long you were bending over, you were doing things, you were getting motion into your life. Now, unless you're a hyper athlete, you're deficient in motion. And my thought was, well, I want to have more motion in my life. I want to have it during sleep because I'm a multitasker. What am I doing during sleep? Nothing. What if I could introduce motion at that time? I'm killing two birds with one stone. I'm getting, and I'll explain the mechanism, but particularly that motion brings lymphatic circulation. So, since we know that rocking produces the best sleep, what prior inventions exist out there that bring more motion into our lives? Well, we know there's the waterbed. It was a failure. We know there's a hammock. It's a qualified success, but has limitations. We know there's a rocking chair. It has some things, benefits, but still limitations. And when I looked at this problem, I thought, okay, as an inventor, how can I create something that does not have the problems of those prior technologies, but delivers more benefits than they even had? And so, as an inventor, my job is to be a receiver. I get quiet, and then the universe will whisper something. It's like a vision or some little thing, and then it expects me to be a mule. I have to take that subtle hint of something and figure out how to implement it on a practical basis. And so the other thing about inventors, and many of you are here, is that if we're serious, we don't do things the same way things have always been done. Because if you do things the old way, you're going to get the old results. You're not going to get an improvement, better results. You're not going to make yourself better. You're not going to make the world better. And so that's okay if you're a laborer. Like if if your job is just hanging sheetrock, once you learn to do it, you just do the same thing over and over and you get the same sheetrock. On the other hand, if you're creative or if you want to integrate newer, better things in your life, you think about it and then you look for something better, like Forevermore, or like Robert with his hydrogen water, or all of these technologies. So you have to do something about it, but these technologies are here, and so we want to integrate them into our lives. Now, I was kind of uniquely positioned to figure out the benefits of motion and create a practical device because, among other things, in addition to the health things I've invented, I also have invented other things that were not necessarily strictly about health. I had a loudspeaker company, and I was very successful at that. In fact, I robbed all the money from my loudspeaker company to get this thing going because the R&D on this was far more expensive than you would think. But one thing I learned when I was designing loudspeakers is that if you're an ordinary speaker designer, you just get into the mechanics of the speaker and your operational agenda is to make a speaker that sounds good to a microphone. But as I started using my understanding of physiology, because I have studied health, I realized something kind of important, which is that the brain does not process audio like a microphone does. Like the brain has a whole agenda. Its goal is to keep you safe. And what it does, when audio comes in, even though you're unaware of this, because at a subconscious level, it's particularly interested in echo and location. So you think that you're just hearing music, but below that level of conscious awareness, your brain is listening for where things are happening. Because as animals and earlier humans, if you were out in the world or in a cave or wherever you were, if there was a sound, you had to immediately know the direction and the distance of that twig cracking or sound, because if it was danger, you would go to it and be alert. If it was food, you would go to it and get the food. So the brain is very tuned in and all this processing is going on. In fact, this is interesting to me, maybe to you. When we hear a sound, even in a small room, most of what we hear is echo. We think that we hear speech, and we do, but the reality is, especially in a room like this, probably 98% of what you're hearing is coming through this PA, bouncing off its walls, and they're called secondary arrivals. You're hearing sound waves from everywhere, and you're not aware of that because this processing mechanism is sorting out the direct arrivals from the reverberations, and if your brain did not process, all you would hear would be just a jumble of echo. But your brain listens to those first arrival frequencies, and then when a similar signal comes a few milliseconds later by bouncing off the wall, your brain de-emphasizes the volume of those secondary arrivals, so you can hear the direction of the twig pop or of the rabbit over here that's going to be your dinner. And because of all of that, I know that was a diversion, but it was something that informed my understanding of motion, because I realized, maybe the brain processes motion in a unique way as well. Instead of just, here's this motion, it has things it likes about motion and things it does not like about motion. So when I really thought about that, I came to a realization, which is I realized why the waterbed never caught on and why hammocks didn't catch on, because those motions the brain does not like. Why? Because the brain's job is to keep you safe. So if you're on a waterbed, when you move, if you probably can't see this, but in your inner ear you have 3 canals. They're called the vestibular canals, and they're filled with fluid. And this is a very old system that animals have had going back to frogs and anything more modern than that. When you move, if you move this way, the fluid in the inner ear sloshes. If you can see this at all, you'll see that a tiny bit of motion and this fluid sloshes up. And that's what tells you where you are in space. It's called the vestibular system. So when you move, this keeps you alert, but its primary goal is to keep you safe. It's telling you where you were and if you're in any danger, because if you were like on something that was moving sideways, as it moved, inertia would try to keep you still and you would fall off of it. And that would be bad. So even though this is operating below the conscious level of your mental activity, it's always going on, even in your sleep, to keep you safe. So that's good, but in the process of your vestibular system telling your sympathetic nervous system that you just moved left or right or up, it raises your anxiety level, which is good if you're trying to stay safe. That's all great, but it's not good if you're trying to be healthy and relaxed and creative, and certainly really bad if you're trying to sleep. So the waterbed, because it moved like this, you got on the waterbed in a store and it seemed cool, okay, there's this motion. And by the way, there is a benefit to that motion, which I'll get more into later, because it increases lymphatic flow, which is very important. But the downside of that waterbed is that it makes you anxious. So you're conscious, you're in the store, you get on the waterbed, or you're at your friend's house, and the motion feels, oh, this is kind of fun, this is interesting. But when you went to sleep on that waterbed all night long, every time that bed moved, this was going on in your vestibular canals. And all night long, your body was sending this message that you're in danger because you're on an object that you could roll off of and you could be hurt. So I am trying to spike your anxiety level to tell you to get off of this waterbed. And this is threshold, it's subliminal. You're not consciously aware of this. But if you watch the rollout of the waterbed, you'll see when they first came out, people wanted a waterbed. And then a few years later, everybody dumped the waterbed. And they thought maybe it was because of the leaks, and that's obviously part of the thing. But more critically, you slept on it for maybe a year, and all night long you had poor sleep. Not just because the support wasn't right, but because all night your body was using its 2-word language. Pain or pleasure. Pleasure, bliss, happiness, or pain. And this spiking of the EEG readings during your sleep on that waterbed was pain. It's telling you, you should not be comfortable, you should not be happy, you should get off this waterbed because it is not doing you any good. So that was interesting. And my eureka moment came when I was thinking about this, because I saw these studies decades ago about all the benefits of motion. Again, I'll get into that later. But I couldn't figure out for the longest time why these motional beds didn't pick up, because we know that motion increases lymphatic flow, which we need. And then I had my eureka moment. I remember, and everybody here has probably seen this, certainly all the guys and maybe the women too. When you're a little kid, some older person shows you the bucket trick. And the bucket trick is very simple. You take a bucket of water and you spin it over your head and the water doesn't spill out. And when you're 6 years old, that seems like magic. Wow, how did this thing get upside down and the water didn't spill out? And so after years of thinking about motion and not figuring out why the waterbed didn't catch, why the hammock wasn't good, I had my eureka, which was that every motional bed ever made created sloshing. And that includes the waterbed, but also beds hanging from 4 ropes. Because when you hang a bed from 4 ropes or even 2, there's a physical event that happens wherein this motion occurs, and that's bad. But there's a different law of physics only for pendulums. No other motion in the world has this quality of keeping liquid flat during the course of motion. And I realized, oh my God, every inventor before who made a motional bed made the same mistake because they followed the old rules. They did things the way they've always been done. They hung their bed from 4 ropes. You went like this. You had the sloshing. It didn't feel comfortable at night. And all we need to do, at least in a simplified way, is make one change. Hang the bed from 1 point instead of 4 points. So when this bed moves, you don't get any anxiety-inducing waves in your vestibular system. You calm down. And I can tell you all of this, and you will think, oh, intellectually, yeah, that makes sense, that's really cool. But at this point, I want to invite you later today to go actually experience one of these beds, because Marvin has one in his house now, and I can talk to you for hours and show pictures, and you'll think, oh, fascinating, cool. But when you lie down on this bed, your body will tell you something that I could never explain to you verbally, because you will lie down on this bed, and your body will go into this bliss response that you just can't get from walking around or standing up or hearing anything that I'm going to say. And there are, quite a few people here that have already tried it. You can ask them. But I really encourage you to take the time to lie down, because you're going to learn something experientially that you would never know before, and that's why we're all here. We're here to look at new technologies that can be beneficial to the universe, to our planet, but also to our health. In other words, green for the home, but green for our body too. So we've got this bed that moves, but I want to explain to you why that motion is good. And honestly, science is still catching up with this. We know some of the reasons. We don't necessarily know all the reasons motion is good. But we know one of the most fundamental things, which is that motion drives lymphatic circulation. And I want to make an analogy, because most people are not really that familiar with the lymphatic system. We all know about the blood system, but few people, maybe some body workers know, but most people don't really understand the mechanics of the lymphatic system. So I'm going to make an analogy. We think of our bodies as solid, but basically we're a bag of water. We're 75% water. And every cell in our body, even though we think, oh, we're solid, we're like, our skin is a bag, and in there are billions of cells, and they're literally floating in this water. So how does our circulation work? How do we get nutrients? Well, if you look at fish, they're in the ocean. So they're a simple bag of water, but if nutrients went in a jellyfish or a fish, the ocean is moving around all the time. So naturally, the nutrients are going to come in, and the cells are then going to grab them as they float by in this water. And then they excrete them through the cell wall, and then they get flushed out. As animals became more evolved, that system wasn't good enough, because now land animals have no such means to distribute nutrients and oxygen to all the cells. So the first thing that happened was the heart and the blood system. So that took care of the problem of bringing nutrients to the cells, because as we know, the heart is a pump. So oxygen comes in and nutrients come in, and the blood takes care of all that. It's distributing through all the arteries. Question? Okay. Okay. So that system is old, and it's bringing nutrients in. But what people don't understand is the lymphatic system is the method to get toxins out of the cells. So by way of an analogy, think of your kitchen sink, and you've got water under pressure, which is analogous to the blood supply, filling up the kitchen sink, but the drain has no pump on it. Same with the body. The lymphatic system has no pump. So when you when you breathe or eat food, the blood is going to bring all those nutrients into each cell, but there's no way of getting rid of it except for motion. And the reason motion is beneficial is because the lymphatic system is some channels that look similar to blood vessels, but since there's no pump on it, the mechanism is very simple. Along those lymphatic ducts, there are little one-way valves, and they're lined all the way down, and they're 1/10 of an inch apart. So when you move, the valve opens. When you move back, the valve closes. So it's a primitive, insanely simple system, and it would be nice if we had a pump, because if we did have a pump on the drain system, we would not have to have more motion in our life. And the reason I asked you to stand up was because we're deficient in motion. All the studies show that people who are sedentary for 8 hours at a desk versus 6 hours versus 4 versus 2 hours, the 8-hour stationary people die younger than the 6-hour stationary people who die younger than the 2-hour, and so on. So we know that more motion in your life not only makes you healthier, makes you feel better, as you saw when you stood up, you took some breaths. Oh yeah, I'm more alert now. Well, that's what the benefit of the floating bed does to you all night while you're asleep. Because you have slept and relaxed, now you're getting this circulation. Your body basically is taking the garbage out rather than it just sitting in all these fluids, which is why you wake up and you're stiff, you haven't taken the garbage out, you're in an emotional bed. All of a sudden, all night long, that lymphatic system is taking the garbage out, which lets the blood come in, bring more oxygen, and makes you healthier and happier and creates bliss. Question?
How long does it take to install one of these from the time of delivery to the time when you can walk out and it's ready to go?
Okay, now the practical questions. I mean, I could talk about this bed and the benefits for hours, but the floating bed, one of my challenges was I had to figure out how to make this not just work on a physiological level, but how to make it practical. So if you look at this, you'll see that this bed is hanging from one point, and we ship the beds from our factory in Iowa, and usually from the day of order to the day of shipping is about 1 month. But the installation process involves a carpenter. So at this point, I should say, you can ask 100 questions about this bed, and 97 of the answers will be, or let's say 96 of the answers will be better than you thought. I mean, I can say things and you'll think, well, maybe that's hype. Truth is, no, it's better than that. But there are 4 bad things about the floating bed. And so a person who wants to integrate a better, superior technology into their life has to be willing to do 4 things. The first thing is, you've got to have the demo. Because unless you lie down in this bed, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. You'll think, oh, that's cool, I heard about that. And then you'll be on to the next thing. So you need the demo. The second thing is, you have to install it. Because to get a motional bed, the ideal motional bed, you need to have it hang from one point, and it needs to hang from a high point, because the motion ideally needs to be slow. The faster it is, the less effective it is. So that means you've got to have a carpenter, but it is not rocket science. Admittedly, it's obstacle number 2. You're going to have someone come in and install it, although in the LIGA homes, we have a huge benefit, because every one of these homes is going to come with a ring pre-installed, so all you have to do is put the bed onto that ring. Installation is very quick, and that's the genius thing about dovetailing with this technology. And in fact, if you buy a LIGA home and you get it financed, you actually can finance the bed along with it. So instead of having to buy this thing separately, you're just making your payments on the house, and you're getting the greenest bed you can get. So that's the second thing, installation. Go ahead.
How many of the LIGA homes typically come with one of those beds? Like how many do you envision, or?
Yeah, that's partly a question for Marvin, who my hat is off to. But as far as I know, each home will have a ring in it, and then you'll get to decide if you want a bed or not.
Yeah, as far as like we're talking Airbnb and stuff like that, and what we were told is 1 out of 4 would have, as far as the rooms, 1 out of 4 rooms would have it as far as that goes. But every home we'd have it set up because you heard Kelly say they can hold up to 10,000 pounds without bowing. So you can handle these beds with no problem.
Is there any type of maintenance involved with these? Just kind of like monthly or annual maintenance, besides obviously washing?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, one of the good things is and I'm a big fan of herbs and, doing these technologies to keep us healthy. But the problem with most of them is that there's an ongoing cost. So if you take vitamins every day or your herbs, you have to pay for that every day. The floating bed, okay, it's a buy. You have to buy it one time. But after that, you don't have to spend any more money. And for the next 50 years, you're going to get the health benefits of motion. You will change the mattress like every 10 or 15 years, which you should do on any bed. And by the way, we have a lot of different mattress technologies. We have memory foam, which in blind studies is the most preferred mattress. In other words, if people don't know what they're sleeping on and they try different things, they tend to prefer memory foam if it's good quality. But we also have latex, we have organic cotton, we have wool, and we're just coming out with a new mattress which is half memory foam and half latex, so you can flip it one way or the other, and you can then make it firmer or softer just by flipping the mattress over, because the underlayment is actually already built into the bed. Like our equivalent of box springs already comes as part of the bed, so all we need is a relatively thinner mattress because we've already got an underlayment that serves the purpose or is the equivalent of like an 8-inch box springs.
What do you expect the life of a mattress to be?
Um,
and are they custom? Is that something that we would order from the floating bed company?
Yeah, ideally you would get it from us, although I don't really care. But the reason you would get it from us is that it's round. And the reason our beds are round comes down to number 3 issue with the floating bed, which is it takes space. Because if you have a normal bed, you plop it down in the room, and that's all the space it takes. But if you want to have motion in your life, which I will promise you do, whether you fully know how much difference it will make, you want to have motion. But this bed, as you can see, is going to swing. And it's going to swing all around, so you have to do a lot in your room, some amount of space around the bed. There are ways to mitigate it to some extent with the tether we put on this bed or with weights, but you still want to have the ability to make it swing. And then the 4th negative about the bed is that to make a bed that hangs in the air is unfortunately not a super cheap thing. If you have furniture on the ground, like all your tables have legs, and those legs keep the frame rigid. But when you take the legs away from any ground-based furniture, very quickly you will find that the frame will go like this. It'll potato chip, and over time it will break. And so, although I started my R&D with repurposing trampolines, I found out many problems with those. The frames of the trampoline are not made to be able to be hung without legs because the trampoline, even though you think, oh, people jump on it, it's strong, no, they're very weak without the legs. So what I came up with, and I could talk for hours just about my process of the grunt work of making this not just work physiological, but also practically so you could install it and it would last. One of the things I had to do was make the frame super strong. So we use stainless steel to make the frame. You can't see it because there's padding on the frame. But stainless steel is 90% recycled. It's one of the most recycled materials on the whole world. And the heaviest single component of our bed is the frame, and that's the magic that makes our bed practical, because it's required not only to keep everything rigid in the air, but there's some more things about the underlayment, which probably I don't have time to go into, but if you come to the house, I can explain. Question?
Yeah, are there any examples of like a commercial application of this, or do you have any ideas for commercial applications for this bed?
Yeah, we do. We're a relatively small company because my abilities have to do with creating things, but the one skill that I don't have is in raising a lot of money to roll out something commercially. But I've been lucky. I did 300 events with this floating bed for the first few years, California, Las Vegas, Miami. And so during that period of time, I talked for 1 or 2 minutes, and put 40,000 people in a floating bed. So I'm not just talking out of my hat when I tell you that I know you're going to like it and I know your response. I actually know from an enormous market study how people react to motion. And insofar as commercial applications, during that time, I met people who would say, oh, I know this person or I know this. So I ended up in this time, we're in about 12 hotels now. We're in a dozen health spas. We ship them all over the world. We've got 8 in Russia, 4 in one hotel there. We've got hotels in Australia, a few scattered around America. And on that note, I will tell you, and this only came up some point after the fact, but one day I thought, well, we're in these hotels, and people who went to the front desk of the hotel, and the guy said, oh, by the way, you can try this floating bedroom, with no explanation of why, other than, oh, it looks cool, and so usually the wife, the husband is usually slower to get it. But the women understand because they brought babies, so they already know what happens when you have more motion. And so the people slept in that floating bed, and the next day, we found that in the hotels that have floating beds, every single testimonial on TripAdvisor, which is, I can't manipulate the data on TripAdvisor. They're just there. If people hated the floating bed, you would go on TripAdvisor and you would see people go, oh, I didn't sleep well, oh, I rolled all over the place. Every single testimonial, and there are dozens of them, is 5 stars. Not even a single 4-star testimonial. So again, we've proven this technology in the bigger picture by personal experience of all these people. Question?
Yes. You talked about your stainless steel frame.
He's giving you a microphone.
You talked about your stainless steel frame.
Right.
Can you also make it out of either the plastic from the Forever board or the, what is the other, Eco-Plast? Can you make the frame out of that rather than stainless steel?
No. The issue is the frame has to be incredibly strong, and different technologies are adapted to different purposes. We have looked at maybe making the frames out of bioceramic, which is another new material, but for the time being, because of the strength and the sustainability and the recyclability, we go with stainless steel. So there's a whole science about that. So I don't want to talk all day. I'll mention a few more things. So we know that we get more lymphatic circulation. We know that's healthy, and we know that's really valuable. But it's perhaps even more important than you think. I was explaining this to a doctor one time, and he said, if you could do a study on lymphatic circulation, you will raise infinite money, because we know from post-operative recovery, people have swelling. And swelling is a simple biomechanical fact. Your blood is pumping nutrients into these cells, but because your lymphatic system, because you've been cut or you've had an operation, can't get rid of the toxins very fast, and so for the next few days, things swell up. If you introduce motion into your life, the swelling goes down quicker, and they know this now because if you get knee surgery, they have these machines that will move your knee for hours or even all night long, because that motion gets the swelling down so you get up and walk better. But the floating bed can do that to your entire body, not just your knee. You can get the whole body in motion. Other particularly useful things are for autism. Autistic kids, and this is a big thing because there's 860,000 autistic kids in the world because they're eating bad food and they're not getting everything that they need. They know that autistic kids need vestibular therapy, which is what this bed does. When you're moving, your input data goes up, but at the same time, your anxiety level goes down. And see, that's exactly what autistic or ADHD kids need. They need more input so they engage with the world, but they need that increased input to come at the same time as anxiety levels are going down. And that is very unusual because almost everything you can do that increases the input visually, auditorily, also increases your anxiety. But the pendulum effect will increase the input at the same time, telling you you're safe. So that's super good for autism, and anybody who wants to know about that, I'll take you to the house and you can demo the bed, but I will tell you more specifically about that. Another thing is motion sickness. You would think originally that, oh, well, this bed's going to make me motion sick, but actually vestibular therapy, which I'll tell you more about later, has been used for 1,000 years to cure motion sickness, because I'll make an explanation about that later. So, I should probably wrap up, but are there any more questions before I go?
Right here. Could you talk just a little bit about where people can go to find more out about this? There's, pamphlets over here or website?
Yeah, I want everybody to go. My table is right there. I have business cards on it. I have a book with some photos. I can show you more pictures. But we have a website too, and the website's on the card. As I wrap up, I think I'll just show you pictures of some of the installs. We have a lot of celebrities and visionaries who, are forward-thinking, who already have these beds. Steven Tyler has one. Uma Thurman bought one, and she loved it so much she called me about a second one. Khloe Kardashian has one. Woody Harrelson, who, as you know, is not just an actor, but he's into food and health and nutrition. Woody became a good friend of mine. He has one. This is the Halo bed. This is a new model we have. So for people who don't like the looks of the rope, we have a whole stainless steel, highly recyclable superstructure that gives you more room in the bed. It looks really cool. It's beautiful. It does cost more money, and it has the same benefits. But if you like the look, there you go. So this bed is big enough for your whole family to relax on, and you can use it as a sofa because we have these cushions. So not only can you sleep on it, but you can sit up and you can get this motion while you're hanging out with your friends, and that's good because there's a thing called brainwave entrainment when you're moving with another person, which the bed does that your sofa won't. And then you can lie down and sleep in it. So you've got this multi-purpose thing. We've been on the cover of a lot of magazines. I was on the Jay Leno show. I was on Extreme Makeover Home Edition. I was in a Sears commercial. I was in PBS. This is a hotel in South Beach. They have a bed right here in the courtyard. That's a place you can go try a bed out. These hotels that have them like this one, you can go try a bed out. Dropbox, as you know, the internet company has two like this in their corporate offices. They use it for brainstorming, for meetings, for creativity, or if anybody needs to take a nap in the middle of the day. So they have their, and they use chains. They wanted a whole different look. So we said, well, that's cool. We can do chains. We've been at a lot of high-level events. This is backstage at the Daytime Emmy Awards show. A lot of celebrities got in this bed. Dr. Oz, all these people. This is James Cameron's bed. You can see the library shelves here. This is the room. He wrote Titanic and Avatar in this room. So I got to go install this. That was a pretty cool day for me. This is the hotel, the Yondas Maui, has 4 floating beds out in the field like this, because outdoors like this, we have this other stand too. Oh, here's one backstage. This is the band Blood, Sweat, and Tears getting ready to go on stage and play, chilling in the floating bed, getting that lymphatic flow, making you clearer, calmer, and more creative. So it's a great thing rather than just having a sofa. This is the Girl Next Door TV show. That was at the Playboy Mansion. This is another one with chains and a really cool artist law. Disney Epcot calls it the bed of the future, that was a great accolade. Another hotel bed. This is Extreme Makeover Home Edition, the TV show. They asked this little girl, what's your favorite part of the home? And she said, my new floating bed, right on the air. That was cool. This is an actual install in a tree in the woods, because these beds can be used indoors or outdoors. This is Robert Plar's home. And so that's his floating bed that you can ask him, but all these people came and spent the night in it, and every night they were fighting who's going to get to sleep in the floating bed. This is a Airbnb in France. This is a list of the benefits, which I can go to later. This is for autism. You put it in as a sofa or a bed, and the child can sleep all night in it rather than just like a swing. We were on the cover of the New York Times. This is an autistic girl and her friends hanging out. This is that halo again.
Question?
Yes. Does the floating bed move automatically, or do you move it?
When you get in it, it'll rock, and you want that motion. And there's a moderate limitation, which is over the next 10 minutes or so, it's going to slow down, but it'll always move a quarter to half an inch, even in the dead of night, just because of your breathing, because the hanging bearing is very, very low friction. So it'll never completely stop. And lucky for us, the lymphatic valves are only 1/10 of an inch apart. If you remember the way I was explaining your lymph flows, these valves are so close together that if you move 1/10 of an inch, you're getting lymphatic flow. Very lucky for us that those are so close, because if they were an inch apart, the bed would not work unless you had a motor. But as it is, fortunately, it works well with the physiology. And by the way, we are developing a motor, but we don't have it. And that'll be for fun, so you can get a lot of swinging. This is Margaret Arvidsson. She was Miss Universe. She took her halo bed and she decorated it with fabric to make it all frou-frou. Hard Rock Hotel has 3 beds. This was the Jay Leno show. There's Steve Shareppa relaxing on the bed. This is an event center in Hawaii. This is a health spa with 2 floating beds. This is an outdoor bed, outdoor bed, outdoor bed. This is in South Beach, or actually this is Key Biscayne. This is a hotel in Russia. They have 4 of these notches with the bed in front of each one. There's one slide I want to get to. Okay, this is important. The bed is an indoor-outdoor thing, and we have a tent, so if you're in a warm climate or during the summer, you can tent this bed in completely, so it's a bedroom. You can live in this, it's completely dry. The whole front is Velcro, like a teepee, window in the back, Velcro in the front, so you can sleep. You can wrap the tent around the back, which is very quick, less than a minute. And you can be open air and see the stars. But if it rains, all you do is you bring that together and you close it, so suddenly you have a way to go camping or put it in your own yard, and you can stay dry and yet have the experience of being outdoors. And I will tell you that being outdoors at night is a different experience than you're used to, because when you're in a building, you're isolated. But when you're outdoors camping, you hear the sounds of nature, and it's just, there's something about it that resets your metabolism like the way humans live. This is my house in California. I have one. So same deal. There's the tent, and you can enjoy nature. This is a hotel, another health spa. This is Nick Nolte's old house in Topanga with the tent. This is at the Playboy Mansion. And that's the end of my show. I think if there are more questions, I'll take them, but otherwise, I'll get out of the way and let some other people talk here.
Do you have a patent on it, or?
Yes, I did get a patent, because for some reason, nobody ever thought, well, I want my bed to hang from one point. They didn't realize how different that would be. And so we looked up, and literally, this had never been done before, which actually every day I wake up and that blows my mind, because you would think, oh, this is so obvious, everyone proved it. Why didn't somebody make a bed from one point? But at least now we have it, and you can sleep this way. And rather than this just be a dry explanation of this stuff, I encourage everyone not only to try it, but to integrate motion into your own life, because you'll be healthier and you will live longer. And because of the fact that your body likes this during sleep, you will literally, and there's a study on this, have more blissful dreams. You will have happier dreams.
Thank you very much, John. John,